Wagwan, my lovely people. You know, me there, you see me I say, and me have the running African to present to you. You understand me, people? Me don't want you shy away from it because the lesson is very important. This morning, IRFM was having a technical difficulty with their app, so it's kind of staticky. So don't mind the staticky. You saw me I say, don't mind the noise. Just pay attention to the message. You understand? And if you can listen throughout the video, it's very important, very educational. You see what me I say? Speaking about the monarchies, you see it, and how the slavery law is still in place right now. So, me not waste no time. Just do the right thing. Subscribe to the channel and share the channel. And just listen to the end. You have a lot of things to learn from this. You see it? Bert Samuels. You see what me I say? KABU, KHERU. You see me? Yeah, man. Very educational. So, just take it in. You see it? Yes, my people. You don't know. We link up again. You see it?
The border and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We urge these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked as Africans who went with Buckman, Dessalines, to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lari Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great presence. Peace.
That he brought us in, that circular structure kind of thing there. The vibe was cool, the vibe was airy, the vibe was literary. We had people from all walks of life. It was a potpourri. It was representative of Jamaica yesterday, inside of the auditorium. Believe me, it was something. Wow. Going to be talking about it on the other side. Happening today in Portland is the This Point Festival, World Festival and Agro Fest, and we're going to be joined on the other side of the break by my brother Rasta Kuro, and I know that Rasta Kuro has with him because the event is happening today. All right, so I'm getting some some responses from some of our listeners who are saying that you're not hearing us on the app, and let me check that out. But in the meantime, so we're going to be speaking with Rasta Kura and Shamari Huggins of Wakanda One and the Malcolm X Foundation. Going to be on the line in a little while, along with the conceptualizer and the founder of this poem, Word and Agrofest. That's coming up. Who are you there, my brother?
Yeah, this is Shamari.
Shamari, greetings. Greetings. Rasta Kura there with you?
Yes, he is.
All right. So greetings, my brother Shamari Huggins of Wakanda One and the Malcolm X Foundation. How are you doing?
Greetings. I'm doing wonderful. I'm very, very blessed. I'm giving a lot of thanks to be here in Jamaica, in Portland, the beautiful parish of Portland, and just a lot of gratitude. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, as long as you two are well, my brother. And listen to you, because Jamaica is now your, like, second home, isn't it?
It's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah, one more time and that's it.
One more time and that's it. I'm gonna have to do something official. I don't think there's anything more official I can do than to be here for this poem and here to celebrate the poetry.
Yeah, you're on the island at the time when, and I'm sure you're looking at what's happening across the United States, what's happening on the university campuses. Hundreds of students are being arrested across universities in the U.S. As the protests are continuing, as we see the students now taking to protest the genocide in Gaza, the genocide against the people of Palestine. Your own thinking of what that foment that we see happening now in the United States and catching on in the UK?
Yeah, it shows the disconnect between people and entities that control the life of the people. It's a huge disconnect, and for a place that speaks so much about freedom of speech, you see that there's, it looks like it's an illusion at this point.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Very interesting to see how this is unfolding, because, as you said, freedom of speech has been the hallmark, but yeah, an illusion, as you said. But we're watching it to see how this unfolds. Kudos to the students in the United States, across the United States, and we're hearing now that Oxford University in the UK has joined. I suppose by the time we get over here, we'll hear about, many other universities across the UK. We hope it catches on here in Jamaica also. So, my brother, Wakanda One, what is Wakanda One?
Yes, Wakanda One is a soul fusion duo who I am here representing myself and my good friend Coleman. We started the soul fusion music group, which is spoken word, hip-hop, song, the ancient African tradition, and we spread vibrations of love and consciousness. And so we're here from Omaha, Nebraska, it being an indigenous, a very indigenous Thai place, Wakanda meaning the Great Spirit. We're here to share that Great Spirit, the oneness of our people all around the world.
And so we can expect the Wakanda One vibrations at the this poem, Word and Agrofest today.
Absolutely. Look forward to sharing some tunes. We have a tune, myself and Rasta Kura, that we look forward to sharing as well, called Declaration, which we created and recorded the video at the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. So yeah, I'm looking forward to engaging with people, with my people, It's a wonderful thing. A lot of gratitude for that.
And remind our listeners what the Malcolm X Foundation is and some of the work that you've been doing there.
Yes. So I'm an ambassador at the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, where Joanna LaFleur serves as the director of the organization. The goal of the organization is to preserve the legacy of Malcolm X, who was born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925. The organization sits on about 16 acres of land, and one with a woman named Moore, who continued to purchase plots of land to expand the property and to continue to make sure that Malcolm X is celebrated in his birthplace of Omaha, Nebraska, which is directly in the Midwest. And so the organization, it serves and educates the community. It's a #1 tourist destination in Omaha, Nebraska. Whenever people come through, they got to pull up to the Malcolm X Foundation.
I can just imagine that, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so all in all, things are looking good for the event later on. I know it's going to kick off in a while. You know, I'm not going to let you go without you giving us an idea, a sample. Are you in the same space with Rasta KHERU?
Yes, I am.
All right, and and I'm talking in a while about what's on later on, because you know it's a wide lineup as usual. We'll hear from Rasta KHERU on that, but before he comes on, a sample, if you will, of something that we'll hear from you later on today. That's worthy for airplay. Yeah, I know. Without
I got you, sister. I got you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said, rainstorm, rainstorm, came and washed it all away. Thought we was at a crossroad, but we just got a trail to blaze. The rain and the wind came and washed away the past, but we won't stop until free at last. In the midst of times like this, we can't miss. We need hits, we need ships across the ocean, yeah, we can't quit. Give up now, please don't trip. When I get in this zone, I be feeling so bold. Left foot, right foot, and the beat goes on. And how could I feel alone when so many that's gone before in this war? It's an eternal struggle, and we moving on the double. Tell the devil he in trouble if you think it's sweet. 'Cause we got beat. When I look around, I see the way he cheats. It's like my people sleep, and the other half confused as they looking at the news, scratching claw to pay their dues just to drown in the pools of the laws and the rules. We gon' keep it on the cool. Rainstorm, rainstorm, came and washed it all away. Thought we was at a crossroad, but we just got a trail to blaze. Blaze, 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 blaze. Big thanks.
Wow, you see why we have to be there today at K's Dispo in Words and Agro Fest is on the way today. Brother, you just heard there, we got beat, we're moving on the double. Serious business. Thank you so much, my brother Shamari Huggins of Wakanda One and the Malcolm X Foundation performing today at Dispo in Word and Agro Fest. Let me talk to Rasta KHERU about what else is happening there today in Portland.
Yes, indeed. And before I go, I do want to say that May 19th this year, Malcolm X turns 99, and he has recently been inducted into the Nebraska Hall of Fame, and so we're going to be celebrating that in Omaha. And next year, if everything stays the same, I will be back at this poem, and I will be back at the festival, and also next year will be Malcolm's 100th birthday, which I want to again invite the people from Jamaica that are able to come and celebrate that, and also celebrate that here in Jamaica. As we know, the great brother Malcolm did a lot of great work, and his work continues. And so I want to also invite you, sister, to come on up to Omaha and engage in the energies. Love your program, Running Africa. I've been listening to it while I'm in Omaha. I wake up in the morning with it on Sunday mornings, and so I appreciate you and your work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. So let's keep in touch on the centenary for Brother Malcolm, and we'll see. It'll be great to broadcast live from there. So let's keep in touch on that. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take a quick break as we wait for Rasta KHERU. A quick break. Thank you once again, my brother.
Yes, Queen, I'm good. I'm great. Give thanks.
Greetings. How many years now, Rasta KHERU? This point?
12 years.
Yes.
12 years of this World and Agro Festival, you know?
Yeah, man. Consistent. immensely. So, well, we just heard from our brother, and wow, that alone already gives us a vibe of what to expect from the stage today. Give us, so this is happening. Once again, give us the venue and then tell us who is on today. Who else is on today?
Well, the venue is the Student Pavilion of KABU, the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, Pastor Garden, Portland. All road leads to the Pastor Garden, Portland today. So, start at 10 a.m. and end at 7 p.m. This year, Shamari just speak, Wakanda one. We also have a poet from Chicago, Black Ice, will also be on the bill. Informative instrument, DYCR, Dr. Amina Black with me, Royal African Soldiers, Metamix, Jinsu, Forward Stepper, So, that whole lineup of I.
Yes, a powerhouse of poets. I mean, that's a powerhouse.
And we have a special appearance by Turbulence and I'm a root of alright. So, that type of vibration, the type of energy we're trying to grow, with this poem and make it manifest,
Yeah, and I'm always asking about the agro part of things. So the agro part of things, what that will look like today?
The agro part of things, Dr. Marshall Emmanuel from the Life Science Department at the University of the West Indies, he will be making the speech about, the importance of preserving natural seeds, heirloom seeds, traditional seeds, and the importance of exchanging, so he will be giving, his speech on that, and plus, the space for the agro part of things is what we call the heirloom seeds exchange part of things, where we invite the farmers, we invite, people who just love nature, who are saving seeds, who are saving traditional seeds, to come up and, bring a traditional seeds and let us exchange so we can keep this type of pollination forward.
So what's it going to look like on the grounds today when you come in? What are we seeing once you enter the grounds? What the activities on the grounds today?
Well, as I said, the stage activities and you have vendors, selling different craft products, and the seeds exchange here, the seeds exchange table, and performances. We're catered one of the only institutions in Jamaica that have a beach, so the beach is also a big part of the whole movement. So we invite people to come and explore the campus, explore different possibilities that exist within the College of Agriculture, Science and Education of the institution.
Yeah, it's kind of a going back home for you, isn't it, Rastakura? I mean, this is your alma mater.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Loving the sound of it. So this Poem Word and Agro Fest happening today in Portland. What the weather look like today? We know it's nice and good around here. So how you staying?
Nice and good. Breeze a blow and time cool and easy, and the sun was warm yesterday. So it's nice and easy and very cool and nice today in Portland. So welcome everyone to just come over, join in the vibration, join in the poetry, join in the heirloom seed exchange.
And we're going to hear from you. We're going to hear from you also. You're performing, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Give us a little piece before you go.
A little piece. Me plant heirloom seeds in the earth, and the ganja plant start to grow. Ganja maker, ganja planter, Rastakura, ganja maker. Me plant heirloom seeds in the earth, and the ganja plant start to grow. So me say, seeds exchange from gate to gate, parish to parish and state to state. Giant pollination for safe foods direction in a time of plastic foods invasion. Save seeds and keep the strain alive. Jamaica is majority of the seeds are GMO, are contaminated with some form of genetic modification, then through cross-pollination, which is the natural means by which plants carry out sexual reproduction, you have the natural vital organic species of the earth becomes contaminated and bastardized. So, make the plant heirloom seeds in the earth and make the ganja continue grow. Make the plant heirloom seeds in the earth, light up the fire and burn GMO.
All right.
Change. Yeah, so.
Burn GMO.
Definitely, you know, so. The only way we can accurately burn GMO is practice natural seeds exchange.
Exactly.
Traditional seeds exchange.
Yeah, man, I take care of the soil. Thank you so much, my brother.
Definitely.
Within the natural law. Everything in the natural law. Thank you. So this is once again, finally, just tell us where it's happening, when, the entry fees, and just invite people to come on.
All right. Yeah, it's happening at the College of Agriculture on the west side, you know, a student pavilion, you know, today at 10 a.m. to start, right? Admission is $2,000 pre-sale. You can still get a ticket online at personlineja.com, you know, and $3,000 at the gate. So we make it reasonable and affordable. You know, we also want to shout out and big up to the sponsors. We want to say Ministry of Culture, big salute to Abigail and the team at Ministry of Culture. Want to big up our nation books, you know, and you know, everyone who contribute in all their different energies, all the poets, all the presenters, you know, Turbulence the Future, I'm a Ruta Farai, Stepper, the whole team, you know, informative instrument, you know.
Give thanks.
So, give thanks, you know.
Give thanks, Rasta Kura. Thank you so much, my brother. This poem is happening today. 10 o'clock it starts at Case. Thank you, Rasta Kura and Shamari Huggins of Wakanda One and the Malcolm X Foundation. Give thanks.
Respect.
Are on Israel and what's happening in Gaza, the atrocities, the genocide. We're never to normalize atrocities, corruption, genocide, because that really, at the end of the day, renders us complicit with the perpetrators. So we're looking at what's happening in Sudan. We're looking at what's happening in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Gaza. Genocide happening all around us. I know that we're pinpointed focusing on Gaza, and there's an atrocious, wicked act happening. You have one country in the process of wiping from the face of the earth an entire nation of people, and they are being supported by Christian Zionism. Because the thing about it, you know, is that, and you can see from these demonstrations that's happening on the campuses across the United States and parts of the UK, that there are a lot of people who identify as Jews who are part of these protests. And if you watch the social media, a lot of people who identify as part of these protests. The people who are most vitriolic, cruel, wicked, heartless, psychopathic and sociopathic and narcissistic, who intend on wiping off Palestine off the face of the earth, majority of them are Christians. So when we talk about Zionism, we are not necessarily talking about people who identify as Jews. That wasn't so from the beginning. A lot of people are talking now about Christian Zionism. There's a reason for that. Because when you take Zionism apart and look at it, all the tenets of Zionism are tenets that are held dearly, preached by people who identify as Christians. And so they are ecstatic with what the genocide that is being perpetrated against the people of Palestine today. They are happy with it because for them, these Christian Zionists, and they will not identify themselves as such, remember this, we are going to have to begin to point out to Christians, whether here on the island in Jamaica, because we hear them, they're preaching it from the pulpits. They are seeing this as prophecy. It's part of what they have been preaching for years. It's prophecy coming through for them. They are the Zionists. So it's up to us to point out to them. Hold a mirror up to them. And begin to focus on Christian Zionism. Global Christian Zionism is responsible for the genocide in Gaza. Global Christian Zionism is propping up the Zionist state. Global Christianity is propping up genocide, is responsible to a large extent for the genocide. Christian countries that identify as Christian. The United States, the UK, France, Italy, from the Vatican right down. Look at it closely. Take it out and look at it. We have to call a spade, and we don't come from St. Elizabeth. We have to call a spade a spade. Here in Jamaica, every conversation I have with a person who identifies as Christian is a chore. Makes me want to vomit. Makes me want to slap someone too. Every conversation. Because here in Jamaica, the wider Christian thought, the theology, is that for the Antichrist to rise as in prophecy, for the Messiah to return as in prophecy, these entire people, as in Amalek, must be wiped off the face of the earth. So Christianity is largely responsible for the genocide that we're seeing in Gaza. Mark my words on that. So there's another thing that a conversation that's happening in Britain, and Richard Sunak is trying to save his own life. You know, is a political life, that is. Something weird about Richard Sunak, Priti Patel, and Suella Braverman. These three are emerging as three of the most racist, blacker than black skin, so-called Indians in the United Kingdom. More racist than the whiter than white skin or pinker than pink skin European. These three. Look at their policies. Listen to what they say. Just listen to how they conduct themselves. Listen to the policies that they are able to stand up in and to push forward against people who look like them, against people who are in or trying to be in the spaces that they themselves are in the same way they got there, which is by boat or plane. So now we have Richard Sunak. And these three, you know, if you check their background, they have connection to Africa, you know. Continental Africa I'm talking about. Whether them parents did it or them did it and they just look at their background. These three, Suella Braverman, Richard Sunak, and Priti Patel. We have never seen anything like them. This is a kind of a post-traumatic colonization disorder. They've turned in on themselves. They hate themselves so much that you can just see what they're doing. And so we have Richard Sunak now digging in his heels about sending people who are fleeing genocide, who are fleeing crimes, who whether it is civil war or any other kind of war, or fleeing poverty and famine, and all as a result, you know, of these imperialists having gone into their country and creating conditions that make it intolerable for them to survive in their own countries. So they have to move out. And they're moving by boats and other ways to get to the UK, to get to Europe and to other places. But so in the UK, there's a discussion now because they've pushed this through, the Rwanda bill. We've been talking about the Rwanda bill here for a while in this space. Now we're hearing that they've pushed this through, and Richard Sunak says that he's ready to send the first plane load. I don't know which airline and so on. But I want to play a part of the debate before we go to Bert, who's coming up at 8:30. Let's listen to this debate that's underway in the UK.
I come from a neighboring country called Congo.
No, I'm playing the wrong clip. I'm so sorry. Let me do this.
After months of gridlock and days of parliamentary ping-pong, the UK government's Rwanda asylum bill is finally to become law. The House of Lords eventually conceded late last night, withdrawing the final amendment that was holding up the legislation. It's a relief for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who hopes that, barring any last-minute legal objections, flights to Rwanda could begin within 10 to 12 weeks. Official figures show the backlog of people waiting to be removed from the UK rose from nearly 1,800 in July last year to more than 50,000 a week ago. This is the moment the bill was passed.
My lords, Rwanda is a safe country that has proven time and again its ability to offer asylum seekers a safe haven and a chance to build a new life. Rwanda has a strong history of providing protection to those that need it and currently hosts over 135,000 refugees and asylum seekers who have found safety and sanctuary there. There are binding provisions in the treaty which place obligations on the government of Rwanda to provide for those relocated under the partnership. And my lords, this is long overdue, but I would also like to put on record my thanks to the officials in the government of Rwanda for all their efforts in delivering this partnership. I beg to move.
The question is that motion A be agreed to. As many as are of that opinion will say content. Contrary not content. The contents have it.
Or we can get more reaction to the passing of this bill from Rwanda, and we can speak to Africa correspondent there, Barbara Plett-Usher. So Barbara, what happens next as Rwanda prepares to receive asylum seekers from the UK?
Well, Catherine, we haven't had an official reaction, first of all, from the government in terms of the vote itself. We're expecting perhaps to get something later today, but the authorities have told us all along that they are ready to receive the first plane load of migrants. They have been ready for many months now, a number of years actually, since the deal was signed, and they are making changes to their immigration law and also recruiting more immigration officials to deal with what is going about what sort of economic impact it will have. But certainly in terms of the reception, if and when that plane actually gets off the ground, there are places for the migrants to go. This is one of them. This is one of the hostels where they will be received. And you're going to see a little bit more about it now in a report that I prepared to show you how this deal is being viewed in Rwanda and how the government is preparing.
It's here the migrants will land, Hope Hostel, long poised for this moment. Bedrooms laid out with meticulous care, attention to the needs of guests who've so far failed to arrive. Workers in surreal performance of their daily tasks.
This place has been ready and waiting for nearly 2 years. Now that the bill has passed, the people staffing it may finally have someone to serve. The British government is hoping that these rooms will be filled with asylum seekers in a matter of weeks.
The hostel can house 100 of those Britain plans to send to apply for asylum here. They could also try to go to other countries, but not back to the UK.
If you get the news today,
yes,
you would be able to accept people tomorrow.
Not only tomorrow, even now.
Rwanda is a beautiful country nestled in the hills of East Africa. The streets are tidy, safe from crime. There is order. Rwanda works. That's the motto. Some here welcome the idea of the new migrants.
I think it will be good economically for the nation, considering that there is nothing that is better than human capital.
This man didn't want to identify himself because he's against the deal.
Where are you going to find the jobs for these people? We ourselves are like we've graduated, but we've not yet secured jobs. We are out there searching for jobs.
The culture of fear runs deep here. There are allegations that dissent is suppressed. Kigali strongly denies this, and its parliament passed a law to address the concerns of Britain's Supreme Court to strengthen protections for asylum seekers.
If they want to hold a protest, can they do it?
Our national laws are very clear about the right to protest. It is protected under specific circumstances, and and if they do wish to protest peacefully within the confines of the law, they're welcome too.
Rwanda has welcomed other migrants, Africans who were stuck in Libya trying to get to Europe. This is a temporary haven for them while they sort out next steps. They could choose to settle in Rwanda. None have. They want opportunities elsewhere. It's all about seeking a better future for those here and those coming. Will Rwanda be a detour, a dead end, or a new home?
And Barbara is still on the line with us from Kigali. And as you mentioned there in your package, Barbara, there's still questions as to how safe Rwanda is for migrants.
Yes, that's right. That was the whole issue in the UK, wasn't it? I think it really depends on who you ask and what you mean. So Rwanda is a pretty safe place when it comes to levels of crime. There are statistics about that. It's very high on the index of safety when it comes to crime. There is one incident that the Supreme Court mentioned with regards to refugees. This took place in 2018, Catherine, when refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo protested against a cut in food rations, and the police opened fire and killed 12 of them. Now, the government here says that was an isolated incident. Nothing like that has happened since. Human Rights Watch says perhaps it's more germane to note that no other demonstrations have happened since, and that some of the people who were involved were arrested and jailed. So that is something that I put to the official you saw in the piece, and you heard her response. Then there is the issue of the allegations of suppression of dissent. Those come from many different quarters, including human rights agencies, political opposition activists, and so on. Again, as I mentioned, Kigali denies this, but the UK government does acknowledge there are some restrictions on freedom of movement and freedom of speech and of assembly, but says it's very unlikely that anyone relocated here would be ill-treated. So that's the calculation that they made.
Barbara, thank you. That's our Africa correspondent, Barbara Plett-Usher in Kigali there for us. Well, for more analysis on this, we can turn to Dr. Joel Grogan, who is a senior researcher at the think tank UK in a Changing Europe. Thank you for joining us on News. So this bill has passed, and the government says it has made plans for flights with asylum seekers to Rwanda. What's your assessment of the government's plans?
We'll see it when it happens. The government is now going to be facing political challenges, practical challenges, and very prominently legal challenges as the Rwanda policy goes ahead.
What we're hearing from the government, and in his press conference yesterday from the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, is that this is really inevitable, and so they're prepared to face down any legal challenges. So is it just not a matter of time until those flights to Rwanda begin?
Well, in terms of the legal challenges, what we're likely to see is immediately challenges coming broadly about the legislation itself. That this law breaches some very fundamental principles of UK constitutional law, of international obligations, of human rights. The law itself is very explicit. It says that no decision maker, so no immigration officer, no court, no judge, can make any assessment about Rwanda's safety other than the fact that it is safe. Whereas for courts, and if and when this then will go to the European Court of Human Rights, which does seem inevitable, they'll be looking at the facts of the case. They'll look at Rwanda as it is right now. If on the evidence they find that Rwanda is not a safe country for asylum seekers, and what that means is there's an imminent risk of immediate harm, or they could be sent back to a country where they would face death or torture or other irreparable harm, they will not find it to be a safe country, no matter what the law present a very difficult challenge for the UK, as it will have an international obligation under the European Court of Human Rights not to send someone to a country where it is not safe. That will then become a difficult political question, for example, for the Home Secretary, in addition to any immigration officers or courts, as to whether or not they will follow the law as they are obliged to do, or follow this law as it is just coming to being, probably today or tomorrow.
Should this policy succeed, and you mentioned the legal challenges that are to come, but should it succeed, could we see other European countries putting in place similar plans? Of course, migration is a key issue across Europe.
Success will be very difficult to measure. I know the Prime Minister said yesterday that success will only be measured if all the boats are stopped, which is particularly difficult in a year where we're seeing record numbers arriving. Just to give a little context for that, in the initial plans that were laid out, we heard about 1,000 people over 5 years could be assessed by Rwanda for refugee status and then settled in Rwanda. On ambitious targets, this could be up to about 5,000 people over the course of 5 years. But for small boats arrivals this year, that was 1,000 people in January, and I think as of April, it's more than 5,000.
So the bottom line to all of this, and that report I had from the BBC, but what I find interesting is that this is human trafficking. This is a new form of slavery that is being couched in all different kinds of languages. And you hear the discussions on safety, on what Rwanda looks like, and how the streets are beautiful and the place is clean. Of course, Kigali is like that. We have done many interviews here where people have said to us, listen, Kigali is what Kigali is, but the rest of Rwanda is a big country. The rest of Rwanda is not like Kigali. Not only that, we know that Kagame is involved in the genocide through his support of the M23 rebels who are leading the genocide against the people of the DRC, the people of Congo. Not only that, we know that these people who are seeking refuge do not want to go to Rwanda. Some of them are coming from Congo themselves through Israel, and now what's happening with Israel, they're finding it difficult, but they're finding their way to Europe and landing in the UK. This question was raised by a member of a town hall. He asked the policing minister, Chris Phillip, about this issue that Congo, which is next door to Rwanda, is now experiencing a genocide which is being led by Rwandans and I say Rwandans, I don't mean the people of Rwanda, but I meant the policies of Paul Kagame, his support of the M23 and others. Let me take a break and come back to that question. Signed off by Charles, the King of England. He's signing off on many things nowadays. So what we have now is this decision to send asylum seekers, refugees, from when they land on the UK soil to Rwanda. Now, understand Rwanda. Rwanda must be understood in context, and we have been talking a lot about Rwanda. We don't have a lot of time to go back through all of it, but you know my thinking. We have done a lot of work here in this space on Paul Kagame, on his relationship with the UK, his relationship with Jamaica, his relationship with the Dominican Republic. You notice these people who are getting together and begin to ask yourself some questions, because it's going to be dread out there. Simple. So here's the situation. There is a genocide that's happening against the people of the DRC. It is worse, and I'm going to say this, and you can challenge me to the debate, than what's happening in Gaza right now. Millions have died. Women are raped. Hundreds of women are raped hourly. They're raped in the most vicious of ways. We talk about that here, not just by we can talk about the rape another time, but all kinds of implements are used to rape, and tree trunks and what of that. I'm just going there because I have to go there, to our little sisters, young mothers, young children, women, and it's being used as a weapon of war. by these soldiers. The genocide in the DRC is directly connected to the minerals that we are using every time we take up a mobile phone, every time we use a laptop, and so on and so forth. We've had these conversations. We'll go back there. But in the interest of time. So this is happening. Rwanda is... Take out your maps, please. Google Rwanda and Congo on the map, and you see what I'm talking about. These are one people who were divided at the Berlin Conference into many different people. And wars and civil wars have been stoked by mercenaries from Europe. Remember the Houthis and the Tutsis. This is all related. This war and this genocide that's happening in the DRC is also connected back to the Hutus and the Tutsis and all of what happened there. Paul Kagame right in the mix. Okay. So it's human trafficking that Rishi Sunak is about to oversee. It's another slavery that the British monarchy, because this had to be signed off by King Charles. So it's another slavery that he has signed off on. Wonder if he knew what he signed off on, but he probably did. But he signed this document. It went through the House of Lords. And here we are. We're not saying that one plane go and leave, but this is the plan and Rishi Sunak's intent. Now, the policing minister, Chris Philip, appeared to confuse the countries of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We're not going to say appeared because he confused them. When responding to an audience member's question during BBC One program, the MP asked whether Rwanda was a different country from Congo. Listen to the question, listen closer to the question, and listen to the MP's response.
I come from a neighbouring country called Congo, if you know geographically, that is located right next door to Rwanda. And right now in Goma there's a genocide going on, and there's such a big conflict going on with people from Rwanda. So had my family members come from Goma on a crossing right now, would they then be sent back to the country that they're supposedly warring, Rwanda? Does that make any sense to you?
No, I think there's an exclusion on people from Rwanda being sent to Rwanda.
They're not from Rwanda, they're from Congo.
They're from Congo.
They're supposed to be warring these people from Rwanda. Are they then going to be sent to Rwanda if they came here on a crossing?
From
Congo? Yeah.
Would people be sent from... Well, I mean, Rwanda is a different country of Congo, isn't it? It's a different country.
Yes, it is. Yes, definitely. You're saying if they come from a war then in Congo, would they then be sent to Rwanda? That's
there is a clause in the legislation that says if somebody would suffer, I think the phrase is serious and irreversible harm by being sent somewhere, they wouldn't be sent. So there is that safety mechanism built into the legislation.
You must have a dying trial, though. I mean, he didn't even know that Rwanda and Congo are two different countries. They're the ones who participated in the Berlin Conference. But he didn't even know that these are two different countries. And what is more egregious is that he doesn't know or is feigning ignorance of the genocide that is underway in the DRC that is being meted out, perpetrated against the people of the DRC with the support of Kigali. That war also includes Uganda. Do you understand? So we see the British government on our watch participating in legalizing human trafficking and reverting and returning to slavery. This is basically what it is. No matter how you spin it, this is basically what it is. Let me take another quick break and then we come back with my brother and friend, attorney at law, Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels. We're going to talk about colonial laws. Colonial laws that are still on the book, the colonial practices that we still engage in on the island, the colonial vestiges that still remain as part of our official institutions. Bert, just before we went into the break, we were talking about abolition, emancipation and independence, and what happened to the laws along the way. Was there a betrayal of the people of Jamaica in the process, that bearing in mind that so many of the colonial laws, which at the beginning of this program you told us that those laws were imposed on the people of Jamaica and were deemed not unconstitutional and could not be considered unconstitutional, so we had nothing to do with it. So in that process of independence, was there a betrayal along the way that so many of those laws remain on the book?
Well, you see, that's the thing. The assemblymen, because remember, your listeners should know that before 1962, we had, when we got our parliament, so-called parliament, we have an assembly where laws were changed. Now, the assembly did not draw from the people. I mean, William Gordon was supposed to be a rebel in the House of Assembly, and he wrote and complained about the governor. And you see what the governor did to him, hanged him. So that the colonial terror reigned after our enslavement. That is why if Bogle got the support that he ought to have gotten 27 years after slavery, 1865, we could have overthrown the governor here and set up our own parliament down here and make sure the laws were good. Remember that the people of St. Thomas began to hold their own courts in the hills, you know. I know you know that.
Yes, yes.
They decided to have their own courts because they couldn't get justice out of Martha because the magistrates and the planters are friends. So where did we go wrong was your question, is that we didn't take it over. We continue as it. We have a parliament today that still will not change the Obia laws. So we still want to keep those laws. We have a parliament, we have a courtroom that opens in the name God Save the King 4 times every day in every court in Jamaica. It said God Save the King. So we still hanging on to the robe of this monarchy which traded and persecuted Africans. So we are still
what made they explain to our listeners at the most basic level.
Yes.
Once something is legal on the books, in the Constitution, but a law, an act, what does that mean in everyday terms? Because we don't want to be too abstract in talking about the colonial laws that remain on the book. The idea is these laws, we are interacting with them every single day.
Yes.
And so they are normalized. So I suppose for this, what does that mean when you say there's a law in place? I mean, what does that mean for the ordinary Jamaican citizen?
Well, when the law is in place, for example, the law against Obia, it means that the police can enter a man's house, see him having some candles and, whatever, and says, you are practicing Obia, and he goes to prison for maximum a year. So the laws, when they are implemented, it means not just that they are written there. That's why you can go to prison. That's why you could go to prison for a ganja split up to 4 years ago. So these laws send a lot of us into prison. And the practices are long. So you have the laws and you have the practice. So when a Rastafarian, before 2002, was found guilty for having a split, when he went to GP or Spanish Town, the same day he enters, his locks is trimmed. Because, the hatred for Rastafari has always been there. That's why we had Coral Gardens. So the trimming of Rasta is a practice that was allowed to happen. There wasn't a law saying that they should be trimmed. But the oppression, that's why I said laws and practices. Mm-hmm. The practice of having every Jamaican standing up in court tomorrow morning, and before the judge can open her mouth or his mouth, you hear, God save the king, and everybody bows. That's going to happen in every court in Jamaica tomorrow morning. And we won't change it because we're afraid to close the door in the face of the monarchy, which we should.
We're going to come forward to that, of course. So let us look now, Bert, at land ownership and crown lands. And
just one little thing I want to explain to the people again. During our enslavement, when Martha or him wife or him brethren them, our mother or our sisters, he's not found guilty. He cannot be arrested. Where he killed us, he's not charged. No criminal act done by the planter against our enslaved people was a criminal offense because we were animals. Just like how you can go kill your goat right now, your goat, you could go kill an enslaved person and nothing happened. And rape to our mothers, rape our men.
How does if you were to look at this closely, how does this impact the even today cases are handled. I'm asking this because I remember coming in as a young journalist and covering court, right? I was a court reporter. And one of the things that always, I've never, in my early days as a young journalist, gone into court to cover a case of rape where the person was found guilty. Could this be connected to...
There's a lot of hangover, We know that history, you have to trace the history of things to be able to understand them. So there's a lot of hangover from those times. I mean, the reluctance of women to go and report rape can be seen as a hangover from them, because you can't report it then, because to which police you're going to go to? Which enslaved woman can go to anything? And right after slavery, don't you think there was impunity? There was impunity for women who were abused one way or the other. And when mothers tell their daughters, you better shut your mouth because, you can't go through it and they're not going to believe your story, that's a hangover. So what is called, that's retention. People don't just move on with their lives, People's lives are dictated, and it's called intergenerational discrimination in these matters.
Yes. It's beginning to make a whole lot more sense.
When they say that Jamaicans are homophobic, part of the carryover of that is that to humiliate the African enslaved man, he will be buggered. Those things happen to humiliate him.
Yes. This idea of buck breaking, and buck breaking was legal.
That's right. And his family, they buggered the man, the enslaved man, humiliated him.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I had to talk about the fact that there was criminal immunity for white people in Jamaica for 300 years.
But as we talk about retention and 300 years or 400 years of criminal immunity for white people, for their crimes against African people, black people on the island. So you talk about laws, retention, and practices, and so that. What is the situation, though, on the island today for the descendants of the enslavers who are on the island? Is it more difficult to prosecute? Is it more difficult to get a guilty verdict? Or are they even brought before the court, or it's dealt with otherwise, as when you put it within the context of retention?
Okay, so you're saying, who is it that is difficult to bring before the court? Who? For example, whom you're talking?
Those who look like the enslavers on the island.
Well, if you go to GP, a man tell me, I've been to the prisons very often. If you see 3 white men in the prison in Jamaica, you're going to find a whole lot among the entire prison population. And the prisoners down there tell me that, Mr. Samuels, all the ethnic minorities, they do not reflect in the prison population. So that's a matter for research. You're talking about cover-up of crimes. You're talking about people who can pay off the police. Who do you think is more able to do that?
So these are some serious issues that we have to deal with here on the island.
An old-timer was being interviewed, and he spoke about Bustamante and St. William Grant. And he said he was part of the march coming up the street. And he said, listen, the police hold St. William Grant and beat him with the baton until the baton broke up. So the journalist said to the old-timer, so what they do with Bustamante? They say, you're mad? You can hit a mulatto man in those days? So even the mulatto is treated differently. The sons of the enslaved man from an African man is treated differently by law enforcement, traditionally.
I know we said land before, but I'm going to flip it in a bit. Take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll look at the laws regarding policing, if you will, then. So let me take a quick break. Law. Bert Samuels is on the phone lines as we look at colonial laws that are still in the book in Jamaica. We're also looking at colonial practices and the vestiges of colonialism. Bert, as we earlier, we talked for the ordinary Jamaican, ordinary person just walking down the street, minding your own business, when a law is on the book, or when a colonial practice is entrenched, or we have vestiges of colonialism that are in the legal framework. And just listening to you kind of fleshing that out, let us right to policing then in Jamaica. And what powers do these colonial laws vest in the police? Talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Well, I know you know, and many of your listeners know, that the Jamaica Police Force, and emphasize the word force, was formed as the direct result of the Morant Bay uprising. It came formally in 1867, but that was just 2 years. And if you Google it, you would see, and I read, it was done with the approval of the governor, John Peter Grant, and its formation was greatly influenced by the Morant Bay Rebellion. So it is to keep us in line, to make sure the police force, the aim of it was to make sure there would be no uprising, because they felt that because we knew about Haiti, they didn't want us to take it over. So the police force was formed to keep African Jamaicans in line. That is what, like you Google it, you will see that. It's no coincidence that it came less than 2 years after the Morant Bay War. So if you have a force that is made to keep us in line, then you would see the administration of the laws kept us in line. And therefore, if I heard a judge who was very honest saying, listen, in certain Upper St. Andrew communities, when the police arrive, the members of the community come out to meet them. In certain other areas in the Jamaican community, when the police arrive, people run away. Run away. Because the idea is that even if you're innocent, because you can be detained without, that's what happened to Garner Barrett in Constant Spring. He was detained for 2 weeks and suffocated to death, not charged when he was on his way to work as a tiler. So the Jamaican young men in particular see the police force as an oppressive arm of the state. And when you're in custody, we say, dog, name your supper. You talk about you should go before a court within 24 hours and 48 hours. Well, over my 45 years, people have been in custody for weeks without being charged. Because it is seen that if you're poor and black, then you have nobody to support you.
So then, so these laws, you have taken us back to the reason why the force was formed, was to ensure there was no more war, no more uprising, no more rebellion similar to what we had in St. Thomas when Paul Bogle and them stood up for their rights. And the rights that they were standing up for had to do with access to land ownership, right?
Yes, that's right. Can I go off on that?
Yes.
Your listeners should know that after slavery, we walked off the plantation without any money, and we didn't have anywhere to go. We had nowhere to go and live. So we were a mass loitering population. What did they do? They passed a law called the vagrancy law, which means that if the police saw you walking up and down as if you have nothing to do and you're not employed, they could arrest you and call you a vagrant. That was to push us back onto the plantation to work. And the vagrancy laws were used by the police force to, as it were, punish unemployment by itself. Because Martha wanted us back on the plantation. When that court case came up in Morant Bay in October 1865, it had to do with a man who was accused of trespassing on land. And Bogle and other people went there to support him to make sure that he didn't go off to prison because they were tired of it. So the vagrancy laws were passed to keep us and push us back onto the plantation. And a lot of us, a lot of men and women hate the cutlass and say them don't want no more slavery work. And that is why killing the soil, we have a problem with it because of the fact that most of the time our foreparents tilled the soil and planted and chopped cane, not for their benefit, but for the benefit of the planter. So the vagrancy law was used to push us back onto the plantation. So slavery really never ended.
Mm-hmm. And the vagrancy laws were on the books up until when?
reparation not carried out in about 20 years ago. No more than that. About 20.
But if you were to talk about retention, I mean, let us talk about squatting then, because this is not much different from the vagrancy law if you look at it, although one is wandering and the other one is being settling.
Yes, squatting. Yes. So here it is. Here it is. The English stole the country from the Spanish. The Spanish stole it from the Taínos. So the English now put their flag down here in Jamaica and say, this belongs to us. And that's why they have those things out at the ports pointing out at sea to keep the loot called Jamaica. So when they got the land, they say that all of Jamaica is the Crown's land. It belongs to the king. So we must understand that Crown land in Jamaica is really stolen land by the British. It is stolen land. Those Crown lands belong to the King of England and the Queen. And we still call it Crown lands in Jamaica. So the people have to walk past these lands, have nowhere to live, nowhere to put their houses, because it belongs to the Crown. And Crown lands are still called Crown lands in Jamaica now. So one of the calls for reparation is to cut up these Crown lands and give it to the people.
But it belonged to the king.
They belong to the king.
So who have the authority to cut it up and give it to the people?
No, but you know that, KABU, if you have land in Jamaica and you gone away to England and America and leave it down here, and a man go on it for 12 years, he can get the title to the land. You want to hear this? He cannot do that to Crown lands.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you can do it to an ordinary citizen's land can be received by what we call adverse possession. But an exception to that, you cannot get adverse possession against the Crown.
All right, maybe take a time with that now. What is adverse possession? How does it work?
All right, how adverse possession works this way. So KABU goes up to England to work in the 60s. She leaves land in Jamaica, sending back money to her children, and someone moves on to the land that no one is at that time occupied. And they begin to pay the taxes behind your back, and they begin to work it. And because you're in England, you don't come down here often enough to run them off. After 12 years, they can apply to the registrar of titles and get title for your land because they've been on it undisturbed for 12 years.
Let me ask you this. What if the taxes are being paid by me? I'm not here for 12 years, but I'm still paying the taxes.
Yeah, well, that is something that would stop it.
Okay. So once the tax... All right, but so the person who captured that land, who's been on it for 12 years, paying the taxes, can go just take my land, and the law provides for that person to legally steal my land.
Right, but they can't do it to Crown land. You cannot move on and get it again, because the king, you cannot get that against the king. That's the point I'm making.
What is the law regarding that?
You just go on the land. You can't take Crown land. You're mad, KABU. You can't take the king. That's the point I'm making.
I don't even want to laugh. If Miss Lou laughed, me I laughed. King give a heartburn. But so all this land, all that parcel of land, all these lands that we have, vast acreage of land here in Jamaica. But we see politicians acquiring Crown lands. How them getting?
Well, they can go to Parliament and get the land to become, another change of use, and it becomes someone else's. But the people must understand that Crown lands are stolen lands by the British, which originally belonged to the Taínos, but we can't get any of it. So after slavery, you would have thought that we could have run onto these Crown lands and begin to occupy them. No, you cannot.
So in terms of so the point you make that a part of the reparations request is that these lands, or demand is that these lands be cut up and give to the people. So the process for doing that is that same parliamentary route.
Yes, we'll have to get laws to do that. But which government is brave enough to do that? Look how many governments we've had.
Why does it take bravery to do it?
Because people are afraid. Then if you're afraid to cut out God Save the King in the courts, which is just words, then you think they will want to cut up King's land and give it to people. And furthermore, the Jamaican people are very apprehensive that you're going to give it to your political friends. But that's another discussion, because we have created
Drax land, but the Crown land, you see, because we've been talking so much about Crown land without understanding the ramifications of even moving on to Crown lands. And this is where now you're called squatters and you can be booted off because this land belonged to Charles. But this the affront, I mean, the audacity of this. So the power is vested, is it in the Parliament or the Governor General in terms of who administers the Crown land on the island?
That has never come up for discussion, but because I am a lawyer, I know that those Crown lands belong to the Queen and King of England. Remember, when the Constitution was made, she made sure to say she's the head of the judiciary, so the Privy Council is his court, and she's the head of Parliament. She came here 20 years ago and said, and I quote, I heard her, my government in Jamaica, that's what Queen Elizabeth let come in here and say. My government in Jamaica, and she's the head of the executive. When you look at the Constitution, the Queen and the King of England are the head of the three arms of government. So she's down here, he's down here, Charles is down here. It's Charles's government, it's Charles's court, it is Charles's everything down
so
here.
In essence, constitutionally speaking, since Charles is the head of state, can Charles or any of his heirs or successors come into the island and claim any of this land?
Well, he wouldn't have to claim it. It is his.
I mean, come build panic, come live panic, come build a hotel or build a summer home or can.
He can because it's Crown land.
Mr. Bird Samuels. Careful what you're saying, Mr. Bird Samuels. Are you sure about that?
I am sure about that. Listen to me. You see the cartel case recently? When the judgment came down, what was written on the formal judgment is that the king has been told by us, the Privy Council, that it is our opinion, and then Charles wrote back down here and said, you are to hold a retrial, and this should be obeyed. The word obeyed is in the order.
Obeyed is in the order.
Yes.
From Charles. So the government, this is being sent to the government, right?
You want me to quote King Charles on this one? You want me to read it?
Yes.
Having heard the submissions from the parties, we have agreed to report to your majesty. So the Privy Council is now reporting to the king as to our opinion that his majesty and then the king sent this message down here. His majesty was pleased by and with his Privy Council to approve the report is the judgment, and to order that those charged with administering the government of Jamaica and all others whom it may concern are to ensure that it is punctually observed and obeyed. End of quote. That's what the king said down here, that we must punctually obey and observe the decision of the Privy Council. The king himself sent that down here.
We have to take a break to give the people time to think about this. Let me take a break.
Okay.
We're at a place, it's incredulous, isn't it? Just listening to Bert Samuels, Pan-African attorney at law, explaining to us where we are with the law, the colonial laws that are still on the book in Jamaica, the colonial practices, the vestiges of colonialism that are in the official spaces. And it raises a question of what is independence? What does it look like? And are we independent? And it also, for myself, Bert, what it is doing is that I'm beginning is a reflective kind of process for me now to say, but who am I? I mean, why am I? I mean, why can't we move it from here? But let me ask you this, because we want to, in this not last, because you're going to come back after the cash pot. Let's move it to the Drax Hall situation, because that is relevant to the conversation we're having.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so listen. So in Barbados, the Drax family owned that estate for 400 years. It passed from Drax to Drax to Drax. The current Drax owner is a member of Parliament in England. His great-great ancestors, when slavery was abolished, was paid together, the bill was £20 million. Today it's calculated to be over £3 billion.
With a B.
His ancestors were paid when slavery was abolished in Barbados. But he was allowed to keep the land. So get money and keep the land. The part of his property that he was being compensated for was loss of business and loss of his other property, being the slaves and the cows and the donkeys, because we were seen as animals. And look at what's happening today. He now wants to sell the estate, part of it, to the people of Barbados, must turn around and pay him drax for lands which he was already compensated for by the British government, which the people of Barbados who went up to England up to 2015, the Windrush people, paying their taxes, because that £20 million was through being paid for in 2015, 9 years ago. So the people of the Caribbean who went to England and paid taxes up to 2015 helped to pay back the planters £20 million.
That includes almost all of my family.
All of our family.
And when we look at it, the disgrace of it, to see, so the powerlessness of it. So the situation with Drax Hall now in Barbados, because we have Drax Hall here in St. Anne, which is connected to...
Yes, his family own land here too.
Yeah, it's the same connection, the Drax Hall here in St. Anne. So Barbados now finds itself being... I note in the news, because it's in the news right now, Bert, and I don't know if you're noticing that...
That's true. The public is totally upset in Barbados, and they've had to halt the process. They've had to... But can you imagine that? Being paid twice? You get it through our blood, sweat, and tears for your work, because you remember the planters got reparations.
Mm-hmm.
They got paid. And you know, we had to help to pay back that £20 million. We went and fight their 2 wars for them. We've done everything. We shed our blood, we paid, and they still want us to come and pay again. That's why they didn't want us to go the Haiti route. Exactly. So we would take it over.
Exactly. The Drax Hall in Barbados, the Drax property in Barbados, is, I think, instructive for us generally, wherever we are as African people in the diaspora who were enslaved, whose ancestors were enslaved, to identify properties such as these, because one of the things that we have not necessarily done, and I know that some research has been done by Professor Vereen Shepherd and the Center for Liberation Research, is to look at some of these properties, but that is ongoing. We do not have enough information, do we, Bert, about some of these properties that will be similar to the Drax property.
But I want to tell you a hurdle.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you a hurdle. When that constitution in Barbados was the same place, it was made in 1962 in Buckingham Palace where they made it. You know what they made sure to do, KABU? In the constitution of Jamaica, they say if you're going to take property, you must compensate the people who own it. You think it's we they had in mind? They knew that their planters were still down here in the Caribbean. So when they drafted the Constitution, they put a clause in it that if you're taking property, you have to compensate, right? But when they took us as their property, they have not compensated us because they look at land to be more important than us. Why did the Constitution say, back in 62, that the African Jamaicans must be compensated? Why didn't we say that? Is that far afield? So we were protecting property, not human beings in the Constitution. And if you take it to court, KABU, you think we're going to win? How will we win when the final court of appeal is His Majesty in Council? Section 110 of the Jamaican Constitution describes an appeal to the Privy Council in this way. An appeal shall lie from the decision of the Court of Appeal of Jamaica to His Majesty in Council. So we're appealing to the King. Are you there, KABU?
Bert? I'm here. I am absorbing it.
Yes. The whole thing is set up. The colonial structure is set up for the preservation of Drax in Barbados, the Drax property here, all them rum lands that you see coming out, they are here. They are very quiet. They own the land. They own it from their generation to generation. But they are then be able to say, we are going to take these lands and give it to the people because you were already paid for it in the £20 million.
Right, under the very same, law that allows you to take my land for bauxite mining, and I want to come to that after we come back from the break, or, whatever possession you want to take the land, because you have that right within the Constitution and the law, but it seems as if you do not, it's only partially so, the right that the government you do not have this over anything to do with crown lands or anything to do with lands that have been handed down generation from generation to generation through the enslavers.
No, because we have not yet classified the enslavers as criminals. So you have remember now, KABU, if you're dealing in drugs or anything illicit, and the government can today come and say to you, explain how you got this big house. And if you can't show them that you had a job or anything, it is called unjust enrichment. And you can get the land confiscated by the government because you cannot show that you have gotten it legitimately. Now, you tell me if these properties in Jamaica were received legitimately or they were done from a crime.
And I hear the point you made that we have not yet classified the enslaver. Are you telling me that in Jamaica we haven't gone the route of legally classifying slavery as a crime against humanity and the enslaver as criminal?
They call it today criminal property. They call it that you got it illegitimately, that you got the wealth if it comes from drugs. And we have these treaties with England. Interestingly, we have what is called mutual assistance between England and us to track down drug dealers and take away their properties. Yes, man, we signed this about 20 years ago with the British. Why don't we consider signing with the British to find and track down, just like how the Jews track down the Nazis anywhere they are, and to track down our former enslavers and their properties and liberate them and give them to the people?
So obviously that is not in place.
No. They call it tainted property. In modern law, they call the drug man's property tainted property.
So we need a treaty. We need a treaty with somebody to be able to say, to have this conversation in Parliament and to say, we're looking at properties from slavery as tainted properties.
Well, you see, we call them historical wrongs. Remember, we can go back. There's no statute of limitation for criminal wrongs, and that's part of the reparations case. That because you committed a crime against humanity, and there is no statute of limitation as to the crime against humanity, then you should not be able to be exonerated. So how can you be representing the people of England as a member of Parliament? And some of your constituents are Africans, Jamaicans, Africans from Nigeria, etc. You are representing them, and you have the gall to go to Barbados and ask to be paid for lands which you created crimes against humanity and created that wealth from criminal conduct.
But the flip side of that is the Parliament of Jamaica. How can you sit in there in all good faith? No wonder the JLP administration is whitening the Parliament for them side. And I'm saying what I'm saying, I just leave it there, Because here's the situation. How can we in all good faith sit down and call ourselves His Majesty's Prime Minister, His Majesty's loyal opposition? There's something wrong one way or the other.
Yeah, because what you have done is that you have courted the enemy so you can't go after them. That's why they hate Haiti. They hate Haiti.
This is why we have a secret meeting in Haiti last week, and a secret body that is put in that is supported by these very same Her Majesties and His Majesties, members of Parliament and Prime Ministers and opposition leader. But I'm going to ask that you hang up. We're going to call you back after the Cashpot, the Supreme Ventures draw. We have a whole lot more to talk about, and we'll see how far we can go with this. If not, we'll do it in a part 2. But we'll continue this conversation all the way to 10 o'clock. Hang up, Bert, and we'll call you back after the Cashpot draw.
Okay, my sister.
Thank you so much, Bert Samuels. talking about the need to break the mental chains. We are going to be exploring, talking a little bit about the urgent need to repeal colonial laws in Jamaica. We're this morning with my friend and brother, Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels, embarking on a crucial conversation about the lingering legacy of colonialism and its impact on our legal system. As you know, for centuries, Jamaica was subjected to British colonial rule, and this imposed a set of laws that, we were discussing this with Bert a few weeks ago, served the interest of the colonizer, not those that they colonized, not the people of Jamaica. And these laws were designed to maintain control, to suppress dissent, and to exploit resources. Even after gaining independence in 1962, many of these colonial laws remained in place, perpetuating a system of oppression, inequity, and inequality. Bert Samuels, as you know, Pan-African attorney at law, has been practicing law in Jamaica for more than 40 years. He's currently partner and head of litigation with the firm Knight Jr. and Samuels. His career began after graduation from the University of the West Indies and the Norman Manley Law School. His areas of practice have centered on industrial relations and civil and criminal litigation. He's a former member of the Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Council of Jamaica and is a frequent presenter for continuing legal education seminars with that body. We all know that Bert is a passionate Pan-African. He continues to advocate for changes to inherited colonial laws with a view to further liberate post-slavery Jamaica. After 12 years as a member, he now serves as deputy chair of the National Council on Reparation and leads their legal working group. In addition, Bert is also a recognized writer, a playwright, a social commentator. His works include the play The Trial of Governor Eyre, and he recently contributed to a chapter to the upcoming publication Time for Reparations, published by Harvard University, in which he outlined a strong case for Jamaica's claim. In 2021, Bert Samuels was appointed to serve as one of the 12 commissioners who presided over the International Commission of Inquiry on systematic racist police violence against people of African descent in the United States. Bert joins me on the phone lines right now. Good morning, Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels.
The KABU,
yes.
You take up my time, you take up some of our time with this long thing.
But because I had to put it in perspective, because, you know, we have time, man. We're going through all the way as far as this can carry us. So, because I clear the morning so we can have this conversation. It's very important for us to do that. Let me thank you so much. And just, we mentioned it just now, but you, many moons ago in this space, you raised this very question. I think in the 90s, you raised this question. So this is something you have been looking at for a while now, isn't it, Bert?
Yes, I mean, you put a Pan-Africanist in a law course and turn him into a lawyer. There's a huge struggle in a post-colonial society. Can you imagine how painful it has been for me to be studying British laws as if we took no laws from Africa and brought them here? So, I want to loosen those chains, break those chains, and bring African practices into the laws of Jamaica, because the laws should reflect the people.
Do you think, Bert, that the masses of the Jamaican people understand or know that we are functioning today, laws that affect them, that these are laws coming from the 1800s, the 1600s, and all the way into 1962, that these laws are still on the book, some of these laws?
Well, I tell you, not even some lawyers haven't even paused to think that there's a law called the Interpretation Act, which deals with how you interpret laws. And it says that
we go into details about some of these, if we're to contextualize that and to really examine that, what that means is that the laws governing Jamaica, many of the laws governing Jamaica, are laws that were meant to oppress and to enslave and to continue the colonization of Jamaicans.
Yes, and you will know that when the 1962 Constitution was drafted at Buckingham Palace, not in Jamaica, in the palace, Buckingham Palace, that's where it was drafted. What they provided for, they have what is called a savings law clause in the Constitution that says all laws before independence are also cannot be held to be unconstitutional. So that is why the Obia laws and the laws calling our children bastards were imported into Jamaica, and we could not contest them that they were unconstitutional. So there was a colonial preservation of pre-independence English law into our Constitution, and the Constitution says you cannot find any of those laws to be unconstitutional. So that's a starting point, eh?
A shocking starting point.
If I get emotional, forgive me.
Yes, because we're more emotional than you right now. But let us start at slavery and the fact that slavery was legal in the Caribbean, but illegal in the UK, and the laws relating to those.
So your listeners should know that one of the reasons why they say we can't get reparation is because the British planters were not breaking any laws when they made us into slaves. They are saying that you cannot find something wrong with slavery because slavery was legal in Jamaica at the time. Now, that's, in other words, our Holocaust was made legal. Now, how did this work? So that you have a case called the Somerset case in 1772, where an enslaved man was on a ship in the English harbor. And a lawyer decided to say he'd applied for the enslaved African man who was leaving from Virginia, destined for Jamaica to continue as a slave. Enslaved, rather. What happened is he went to court and the case came up to decide whether slavery was legal in England. And the Chief Justice said, no, slavery cannot be legal in Jamaica because it was, and to quote him, it's odious and could not be permitted on English soil. So slavery was ruled not to be legal in England. But in Jamaica, slavery was and continued to be legal.
Back up a little bit. Slavery was in the courts in England, out of the Somerset case. The Chief Justice, slavery was odious and could not be permitted on English soil. So there was an understanding that it was odious and no way could be permitted. What year are we talking about here?
That's 1772. That's in the middle of the enslavement. I mean, slavery is waxing down here. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he said it couldn't be permitted in England. But they say it is. So if Somerset had sailed down to Jamaica, he could not mount that case down here. So we have this thing, this anomaly, this craziness that on one side of the British Empire, slavery is illegal. That is in the homeland of England. But outside, they say there's a different law. So that apartheid could not exist in England, but it is down here and slavery. Mm-hmm. That's basically what it says. Now, how could that ever be?
How could that be? One of the things that we know is that so many of these cases came up before the British courts, and Lord Mansfield, because we talked about Lord Mansfield and we looked at the Zong also, and the rulings he made regarding the Zong. So there was this ongoing conversation, and yet it wasn't until 1834, and obviously that came out of the resistance to enslavement.
Some sharp war.
Exactly. And this is where I want to go, Bert, because so we had this resistance, then, conversations about abolition, which we'll go into more details later. And but yet we find ourselves with so many of these colonial laws on the book after emancipation. And so one of the things that we're saying is that, so what then was the promise of emancipation? So our ancestors freed ourselves from chattel slavery, took the chains off. Yeah. What would have been the responsibility of the children of the ancestors going forward in terms of how we continue that process of emancipation, if not for some of these things that you're talking about here?
Yeah, and you see, that is why you and I, KABU, respect Haiti so much, because Haiti drove them out and took over Haiti, so it could now move on the path. That's why they hate Haiti so much. I mean, no pun intended. They hate Haiti because it was an example of not anybody giving us any abolition act, and then we say Queen Victoria is so great to give us our freedom. Haiti took it from them, the French. So we didn't have a situation where there was a revolution in Jamaica. We tried to do it in 1865, and they hanged and murdered 400 of us. So because Jamaica moved over from slavery into, as it were, emancipation, then freedom, we carried the laws the very same way. We carried the laws, and that is why William Gordon got into trouble with the governor, because he said, listen, these are oppressive laws. People are walking on the plantations and you're calling them trespassers. Bring them to court in Morant Bay and sending them to prison for trespassing on plantations when they have no other place to go. So that's the question. Slavery, abolition of slavery, we kept most of the laws.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break. Well, not so quickish. And when we come back, we continue this conversation. I want to pick up from there, Bert, and then to come forward, because I think we need to make that connection. And where did Jamaica fail, if at all we failed, in that process of from emancipation to independence, why we never seriously addressed some of these oppressive laws? Let me take a quick break. Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and we have been looking over the last hour and a half at the colonial laws that are still on the books here in Jamaica, looking also at the colonial practices that are entrenched in our just everyday living. Some of them not necessary laws, but they have become practices and part of the tradition, and people act upon them as if they are law. And that is one of the reasons why we must know our rights. Looking also at the colonial vestiges and what happens in the official spaces here on the island. This I can tell you, that my every single place that I am in the social media spaces, and private and public, that they're flooded with information and questions and responses from listeners, people who are just shocked, people who are shocked again because they knew this before, and people who are now frustrated, ready to take to the streets, want to have conversations about constitutional reform, want us to go there, and are demanding all kinds of stuff. But yes, after this conversation with Bert Samuels, and we're standing by to have him back online. Can we get Bert Samuels, Pan-African attorney at law, back on the line? And you're looking for leaders and so on, but we're going to have to lead from where we are. Leaderfulness for the change, because they're doing something about us without us. And in another few years, once you've pushed this through the book with the colonial laws still on the books because it suits them, we're going to be asking ourselves, how come the promise of emancipation has not been fully realized? Independence was an interesting thing, because how did we come to 1962 and beyond 1962, and every year full up the National Stadium with our bottom stuffed with all kinds of cloth, dancing and prancing and celebrating something that is an illusion? If our laws are still the laws of the enslavers, if our head of state is still the enslaver, if our lands belong to the enslaver, if our institutions of government and justice is overseen and run and headed by the enslaver, then how can we say that we are independent? I'm standing by to go back to my very special guest, Pan-African attorney Bert Samuels. And we're going to continue this conversation into 10 o'clock, looking at our particular situation here on the island. And wherever the enslavers were, other countries, and you heard Bert mentioning Barbados now, wherever they were, the Caribbean islands, that they have left a legal system. And some of these laws have evolved over time, but they evolve to please the oppressor just the same, on the side of the oppressor just the same. Let me know what's happening with Bert, please. So here we are. Our colonial past, because Jamaica has a colonial past, has left this lasting impact on our legal framework, including the laws relating to land ownership. And some of these colonial laws are still in effect or are influential in Jamaica's legal system. You heard Bert just now talking about titles and the registration of titles. So we have to look at the Registration of Titles Act. Whether that is it's still there from the 1800s, or there have been some change over time. Not quite sure what's happening, so let me check to see if we're having difficulty getting Bert.
Yes, I am. Yes,
okay,
I am.
yes, I'm hearing you now. All right, Bert, I can tell you this. I have 101 questions from our listeners. So next time you come in the studio, we'll open the phone lines and take those questions, and I'll try and read some. If we get a chance, before you're off, I'll try and go through some of those questions that are being sent in to me by listeners who just want...
I can imagine. Very painful morning. Very painful.
Yes. I think we're coming face to face with ourselves this morning, the reality.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is what it is, and we have to deal with the isness of things. So we can labor under the illusion, the bread and butter issues have us up and down all the, every day. We're not so concerned about the laws and how these very laws are impacting these very bread and butter issues that we're facing.
Yeah, and the practices, it makes a lot of my colleagues, sorry to say this, have bought into the colonial past, For example, you know that if you're the best lawyers in Jamaica are supposed to be the King's Council. So when you're elevated in Jamaica to be the best bar lawyers, you're described as King's Council. That is to keep the whole thing that you're striving to be more colonial every time. And then now you go into the parliament. So, a lot of lawyers go into the parliament. So do you expect anything better?
Right, because at the end of the day, what is the oath that the King's Council, the person who is King's Council, what kind of oath, if any, do... And I think you've taken us through this before, but they do take an oath, don't they?
Yeah, I would say it's a pledge, and in part, it reads like this, in part. It's too long and, so colonial and old English. But it says, when you become King's Council, you have to declare, and you hold your right hand up, and you declare that you would well and truly serve the Queen as one of her council, learned in the law. So your first line in that pledge is that you will serve the King, now the King, as one of her learned lawyer. And then you go on and say, for any matter against the King, where the King is party, you will take no wages or fee of any man.
What that mean in a legal pattern?
It means that you are a slave. You are the king's slave. Because you say you're not going to take no fee or no wages to work for the king if there's a matter against the king. You are a slave.
And does the matter against the king mean the matter matter against... No, it will be different from the matter against... Tell me. It doesn't mean the crown against the crown?
It's against the crown.
So it's always a crown against somebody, but nobody against the crown?
Yeah, and let none of the King's Council tell you that it is not carried out. It's a pledge that you take in a ceremony. And if you don't mean it, don't say it. That's why, you know, KABU and I could never bow and take that, right?
I know. But within your profession, it is considered the pinnacle of your profession. How does someone like you navigate those spaces?
Well, you mean the cases against the king?
No, the case, something back of your name.
Oh, yeah, well, you see, you get a lot of respect. You sit in a special bench in the court. I can't sit in that row in the courtroom where King's Counsel, and you go firstly. When matters are being called, King's Counsel is allowed to speak firstly. So the King's representative is treated honorably in the court. So I have to wait until all the King's Counsel are through talking before I can talk.
But don't you never tell us that them something I got you in a court?
And so what? I'm PC. I am PC. Not PC. I'm proud to say I'm the People's Council. I am PC.
And this is why I asked earlier, Bert, because it makes a lot of sense now that these colonial vestiges that are part of our practices and also some of them in law, that there are consequences because they dictate how you behave, who gets preference, which party is sitting in a court, who talk first.
Yeah, and you see, listen to this now. So tomorrow morning, you go to the court and there's King's Counsel sitting in a special bench. And then the policeman comes in and says, all rise, and we have to stand. Oye, God save the king. And we bow and sit. Well, I never bow yet, I never bow. But and we sit. So you have the King's Counsel, and we're reminded that God must save the king. So that the fact that he now has cancer, we are down here asking God to save him. All the Jamaican courts are asking God to save King Charles. And the court can't start it out saying God save the king.
And in Parliament, do they still go through that process of is the prayer still there?
I don't really deal with the Parliament procedure.
Yeah, I know that, last time I was in Parliament when we went there for the freedom fighters, our heroes whose records were being expunged, that there was that whole process of praying for the Queen.
Oh, the prayer, yes. Mm-hmm. So there are prayers in the Parliament. And the mace, the top of the mace has something looking like a crown, because that is to remind us that it is the British Parliament. It belongs to her. It belongs to him, rather.
What does this mean in essence when you have the judiciary that belongs to Charles and the Parliament that belongs to Charles?
What it means is a constant reminder to people reading the law. It is a brainwashing of lawyers that we do not question it. A lot of lawyers are upset that I'm talking this way this morning and I'm disrespecting the king. So it means that it is the enforcement and the concretization of colonial thinking, that we cannot exist without the Queen, that we must continue to pray and ask God to save the king every morning. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we are supposed to be educated. We're supposed to know our history and sit in court and be comfortable for that to be said. I know two Guyanese judges who came here. They're from Guyana. They say they are not asking, no, God save the Queen can happen in their court. They tell the policeman must say, God save the people. So
are there ramifications for that? Are there consequences, or they are perfectly within their right?
Justice has written to them, because as I've said to you before, I've written to all the chief justices in Jamaica, asking them to respectfully retire God save the king in our courts, and it has not gotten any traction.
Did you get a response?
The response was noted.
Yes, you did say. Yes, I know those responses. I get some of them sometimes myself.
Yeah.
All right. So what it takes is activism and follow up and so on.
And the Jamaican Bar Association is supposed to be active. I invite the Bar Association this morning to approach the Chief Justice and ask him to retire for God's sake. God save the King in our courts. Let us not take it for granted. Let us be self-respecting lawyers, please, because it is you cannot dispense justice until you ask God to save the King. That's what we're saying. That's why it is said at the morning when the judge is going for lunch, we get up and we say, God save the Queen. When she comes back from lunch, we get up again and say, God save the King. And finally, when the court is over for the day, we say, God save the King. So it's 4 times the Jamaican court says every day. I don't know if you're not offended by that, you know.
Terribly offended. I mean, terribly offended. And this is what I'm getting from our listeners who are contacting me as you speak. The offense on the island is great. We talked about land, and land, of course, is related to where the beach is, and this is something that we're fighting like crazy now on the island. So this is also the laws regarding access to the sea and access to the land, access to the beach, are also coming from, these are colonial laws also. What can you tell us about these, Bert?
Well, okay, I would think that when you look at the Beach Control Act, you find that the British were very careful to make the sea belong, the foreshore of the sea belong to the Crown. And it's obvious because Jamaica is an island, and if you stole the island, you want to have control over all the seas because your enemies may come in. You know, so that the historical justification for the Crown owning all the foreshore of Jamaica, which the foreshore is that line between when you have low tide and high tide. So in all intents, it's the sand, the beach. Mm-hmm. It's owned by the Crown, and that was because the Crown wanted to defend the island from the people from whom they stole it. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of fallout from that because there had to be exceptions, and there are a few exceptions where fisher folk cannot be hindered from, you know, bringing in their fish and their boats on anywhere. But I know what you're getting at. Mm-hmm. Well, what has happened is that the hotel industry in particular has fenced these beaches and decided to take them for themselves.
Take them for themselves meaning what? Taking them from the Crown, or have they been given to the hotel? Do we know to what extent they have a right to do so? It's a question that I'm asking.
All right. So the first thing you do is that when you sell these lands which butt onto the shoreline, then there are certain rights that the people who own lands which are adjacent to beaches, that the law says that they should be able to enjoy the beach land, and that's Section 4 of the Beach Control Act, that it allows you to be yourself and your family and any private guests are entitled to use the part of the foreshore of the joining land for domestic purposes. So I guess the hotels can say, listen, we bought this land, the beaches are joining it, so we should be able to enjoy it. But it does not give you exclusive rights to it. So when I'm walking past, be it hedonism or Sandals Beach, I should have the right to walk on that sand right throughout. But what we have had is apartheid. They're fencing the boundaries and carrying the fence into the sea to prevent us from walking the shore. And I know that, Coral Gardens was related to that issue too, in some respect.
It's always land. It's always access. Jabem, along with Attorney Marcus Goff, they've been doing a brilliant job by carrying some of these cases into the courts and testing this colonial law in court. What I notice that's happening through the work that they're doing is that they have received injunctions here and there, and the cases are ongoing. But should it get to this place? Why is it at this space? Looking at this in the wider context of colonialism and enslavement and all that we've been talking about this morning, this falls smack into it because we're talking about an act that is a colonial act. That's a colonial law that is on the books that the government is actively using.
Yes, and you see, the fact that we were taken, one of the things KABU will forget, where we come from in Africa, land abounds, So when you bring us to this cage down in this small island and tell us where we can walk and where we can't walk,
to think that the agencies, well, how do agencies work? Agencies with responsibility for land and sea and so on. Because we have the UDC, we have NEPA, we have these agencies that are responsible, and we also have NEPA that is situated within the office of the representative of King Charles, and also representative, well, His Majesty's Prime Minister. NEPA sits in His Majesty's Prime Minister's office, the Office of Economic Growth and Job Creation and so on, which is part of the Prime Minister's purview. It is within his office. Have you ever seen, I don't know if we're paying more attention now, or we never used to pay enough of that attention before, but it seems to me like more now than ever. I have never seen a Prime Minister who has weaponized a colonial law to the extent that the Beach Control Act, the Colonial Act, has been weaponized against the people of Jamaica actively, Bert. And I want you to talk to us about this, because this, for me, is phenomenal.
Yes, so you have a developer who buys a beach and puts dolphins in it, and the dolphins are polluting the water, and the people are saying, when we are swimming, excretia is around us, and how long did that struggle take?
Well, one of our sisters died in the very water struggling against that.
Yes, I recall. Yes, out in Discovery Bay. I think it is.
Yes.
Discovery, anyhow. That's I hate to use that word. So that the beach and the control of it for economic reasons, you have to pay to go into the hotel so you can go onto the beach, is another wrongdoing that we have not. In Barbados, I must tell you, you cannot fence off any beach in Barbados, because the government has a liberal policy to the use of
even though Jamaican hoteliers have gone into Barbados and tried that very same thing until they buck up and Jack, the beach is mine, and had to turn back.
What the Jamaican hotelier who went over there to capture that idea?
Yes, one Jamaican hotelier did it. But to get back to the active use of the Beach Control Act, why I'm saying it is active is that we, in the last 5 years, and right after, and more so within the period of COVID, when the country was locked down, and outside of COVID, as Jamaicans, we have lost access to more of the coastline than we have lost in the former 50 years. Which means that the Beach Control Act is being weaponized against the people of Jamaica. And the question I'm asking, here we have a colonial law where the country is talking about constitutional reform, but a colonial law is actively in use by the government of Jamaica.
Yes.
What does it say?
Yeah, because we know that the sea is a resource for the planet. And the law of the sea has a phrase which I like. It says that the oceans is the common heritage of mankind. I would like for us to see the shoreline and the beaches of Jamaica become the common heritage of the people of Jamaica. That's how we should treat them. And if we have politicians who are serious, we should now amend the Beach Act, taking out that it belongs to any crown, and declare that the beaches of Jamaica is the common heritage of its people. That's what we need to do.
But I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We're looking at colonial laws that are still on the books. We're looking at colonial practices and the vestiges of colonialism in the various halls and the various institutions, government and otherwise, right here on the island, even while we're celebrating independence at this point. He says, ask Bert if the king can remove the prime minister or the leader of the opposition or any member of parliament without an election, and on what grounds. And he continues, we the people can only do so through an election. As you know, there are no recall. No recall is in our electoral laws, and so we have to wait when they call the elections.
Well, I'm going to answer it. I hope I don't right, in the parliament. So the prime minister is appointed because he commands the majority of the members of parliament in the lower house. So you could find a situation where the governor general is not making that appointment. You could find that because there have been instances, I think in Trinidad, where there was a tie and the governor general was now called upon, and in Australia, I think, equal amount of seats between the two political parties. And it was the governor general who appointed the prime minister then and there. So if you ask me, can the king remove a prime minister? Yes, under the constitution, his representative, the governor general, can now say, persons have crossed the floor and you no longer command the majority in the lower house. So technically...
It has to be command the majority. It can't be you are making an ass of yourself and I represent the king here and I can move you.
I don't see that in the constitution, but because he's one of her servants, the prime minister in Jamaica is one of his servants, then anything can happen based on that definition. But in practice, it is really through an election. But if the person's crossed the floor and he no longer commands the majority, his representative here is being the governor general, his servant here, then it doesn't happen. You know, when the king visits Jamaica, the governor general is no longer in charge. It is the king himself. So he visits down here, the governor general has to step back whilst he's here.
Step back and step down?
No, he step back because the boss is here.
Right. So the governor general in Jamaica, explain the role of the governor general for us, according to law, constitutionally.
The governor general is the preservation of the king of England being in charge of the island. So he's the servant of the king. He is appointed and becomes the servant of the king in Jamaica. He's the king's representative down here. So all the things that the king does, he does it on behalf of the king down here. But sometimes the king sends things directly, so that in the cartel appeal, the king didn't go through him enough. He sent his directives directly down to the courts in Jamaica that this is the outcome of this case, and I ask that you obey it. So sometimes in that instance, when he's exercising his head of the judiciary functions, he doesn't route it through his representative, the governor general. It is just to remind us that he's here. So the governor general is a reminder. That's why it's called, he lives in the house called King's House. So that house up by Hope Road, it belongs to the King of England.
So then, the position, and this is not to say the person, but the position of the governor general, that seat that the governor general occupies, this is one of the most egregious acts of oppression and continuing slavery against the people of Jamaica.
Yes. And Section 27 of the Constitution says, there shall be a Governor General of Jamaica who shall be appointed by His Majesty and shall hold office during His Majesty's pleasure. That means he can dismiss him as he feels. And who shall be His Majesty's representative in Jamaica. That's what the Constitution says, Section 27.
And so how is the Governor General selected?
Now you tell me. I think the Prime Minister would give the position in consultation. There's a formula they use to trick us. The Prime Minister, in consultation with the leader of the opposition,
which is His Majesty's loyal opposition and His Majesty's loyal Prime Minister. So that's the same thing.
Would send a letter up to the Charles and say, I think this should be the next Governor General. And then Charles would approve it because his boys down here have made that suggestion.
Obviously, this cannot happen without Charles approving it. So Charles has to stamp it and say, approved.
He has to.
So a lot of power. In other words, so when we think of the monarchy as a head of state, it's always very dismissive, like, oh, you're the head of state, but no, we have your prime minister and you have your so-and-so. This also is policy, isn't it? The head of state, which is the King of England, has a lot of power. Just listening to you all through this morning on how and what we do here on the island, how we go, what we do, and how we do it.
Yeah. So as I said, Section 48, 41 of the Interpretation Act said that all laws and practices in England are to be accepted in Jamaica to be the laws of Jamaica. And therefore, all of that came down. That is why the concept of being a bastard, which is an English word for a child born from people who are not married, that is 1974. Any of his father's property if the father didn't make a will. So it's only the children who were born in wedlock who could inherit if the father didn't make a will.
And that was changed. I remember the slogan, the bastard, no there again.
Yeah, 1974, that was changed. So I'm telling you, although that was changed, there are children still living who were designated as bastards, in before 1974. And there was a ceiling. Listen to me now. KABU, if you went with your child who is not married to the father and went to the family court back then, before 1974, there was a ceiling on how much you can get for your child, whereas there's no ceiling on for the child who is out of a marriage. So there was open discrimination against 86% of the children born in Jamaica.
Before 1974. So let me ask now, what is the impact now and the consequences of that law that came all the way up to 1974?
The majority of children, 86%, felt less than, they felt alienated, marginalized, you felt bad, you were called bastard, and the word bastard is a curse word in England. And here, you bastard you, it means that you're less than. So that was hugely discriminatory of children. And how that law stood until 1974, when we had a so-called constitution that said that all of us are equal. Nobody seemed to have challenged it. No one. I mean, the trimming of Rastafari was just going on and on, I felt honored to know that I was the one that brought that law to the courts and got them to stop trimming Rastafari. But, that is it.
The bottom line is that even though that has changed, and you talk about the retention of practices, so some things have changed on the book, but when it comes to policing, and I'm talking about the police force that you talked about earlier, we still see, for example, people are here getting cut off in custody. In Zinga is the latest case that we hear about. We still have a situation where, and I don't know if there's a law around this or it is just practice or it's part of the colonial vestiges, that children with dreadlock are still being turned away from government schools and other schools on the island here in Jamaica.
So that, and in a judgment of the Jamaican court, written judgment, the fact that said Jonjo and lies was said by the headmistress that locks attract Jonjo and lies, that hate speech. It was not condemned by the courts. It was not condemned. And we are still fighting because the school boards are a law unto themselves. I want to know how the government selects these school boards, where people who are telling school boards that they can send home children who are locked. Still doing that. What a fight. And we are, countries where we are a majority, that doesn't happen. And we are the majority down here, and that is still happening.
So what provisions are there in the law, the wider law, in terms of an umbrella provision, to deal with that particular situation, to override those decisions, if you may? I mean, for want of a better word, of the school boards regarding dress code or grooming of hair.
Right. So there are two things I want to talk about. KABU, I don't want to get in the trap to say that the preservation of your locks should be on religious basis, because a lot of persons who are not Rastafari are carrying locks.
Exactly.
I don't want to go under that umbrella, but the first one is, if you tell, all my kids are locked. I'm the only boy. So when my kids go to school, the teacher said to her, St. Andrew, I am calling them out. When are you going to pull it out, her lock? She was asked that offensive statement was made to her. But I'm saying that we shouldn't, you ask me what law should prevent that. Firstly, your religious practices. So that alone, Rastafari go through on religious protection. But equality and dignity of the human being, which the Charter of Rights now speaks about, is that when you're exhibiting your locks, you're exhibiting your ethnicity. So when the Indian child goes to school and his hair is at shoulder length, or the Chinese is at shoulder length, when we carry our hair at shoulder length and our hair defies gravity, so when we carry that huge afro that used to be thought in the 70s, or when our child go to school, let no one ask if she's Rastafari or he is Rastafari. That's none of your business. I'm carrying my hair the way it was created. That's the end of the story. I do not want any parent to subject themselves to having to tell any school board that your child should be allowed because they are Rastafari. They are locks because that is how the natural hair is carried by African people.
What effect, if any, just on the top of your head, I'm not quite sure if you've been looking at this, the church and religion has had on the practices or even the laws that are on the books now?
All right, so let me just tell you, I think Christian church may be upset about this because what has happened is the Christian church has not come down in support of other religions, so that when the Christian looks at the advertisement on television where Indian folks can talk about, the belief, and they can give you good luck, and if you want to keep your boyfriend, they can give you oils and all that. No problem they seem to have with that. But what the law against Obia says that the African religious practice of Obia is being practiced. They do not speak out sufficiently about or at all about religious rights of any group to carry out their religious practices. Secondly, a lot of these school boards are schools are church schools, and they too are carrying out the persecution of Rastafari and locked children. So I don't understand how the church is in complicity with that kind of discrimination.
But the church was also complicit with slavery, and even though there are elements of the church that participated in the abolition movements, but for the most part, the church was part and parcel of slavery. So too were the universities. And we noticed the demonstrations now on the university campuses across the United States. I've been thinking about this within the context of how universities, the call that the young people are making for universities to divest themselves of investments in a genocidal state. But this is even coming out of slavery. In England, for example, and Burton, we've talked about this, I think we even talked about it the last time we talked about Obia, is that the universities in the UK, that they profited to a very large extent from the enriching themselves from slavery. So the money is coming in from Jamaica, for example, went straight into the universities in investments, and we see some of them returning, talking about reparations right now.
Yes, and the artifacts that they have in their universities too.
Yes.
But back to the church a little, KABU.
Yes.
The African church confessed that in Barbados they branded their slaves. The Anglican church used hot iron and marked the backs of the enslaved as their property, like how you do cows.
Of course.
And animal rights people are against branding in any form. Right. Of a poor animal.
And we had a group of church people coming in, and you probably know, as part of the Reparations Council, were here just last week apologizing for the role that the church, the UK churches, played in the part that they played in slavery. And I'm bringing that up to say the church is always complicit in the oppression of the people.
Well, that is a historical fact. I mean, it's not, mind what you're saying on a Sunday, but it is true that they were all complicit. I mean, how were they enraged when Deacon Bogle, what movement in England came out in support of the hanging of Deacon Bogle? You tell me. What did the Anglican Church in Jamaica say about the hanging of Deacon Bogle? Nothing.
And many other...
In fact, he was celebrated as not causing Jamaica to plunge into another Haiti.
Yes, I'm excited coming into the studio. All right, but thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you and the work that you have been doing in the spaces. Thank you, Bert. So K-Dot says there's the betrayal intact, keeping the British laws and constitution. Bert eloquently speaks to it. All of what Bert mentioned contribute to our 500-year trauma, and you see the exponential effect of the rapes and the other criminal immunities every day. No state healing of the state happened between when the British flag descended to the ascension of the Jamaican flag. And he says, I think Dr. Freddie Hicklin wrote a brilliant paper reflecting our general insanity based on exponential trauma that has become a state of normalcy. And he sent me the document, the Jamaica Imperial Association, courtesy of the cabal of well, he says courtesy of the cabal of downpression. Do you want to make a comment on that quickly, Bert?
Yeah, I think Hicklin did speak to the post-slavery traumatic syndrome that he suffered from, the self-hate that has come from enslavement. They are in denial about it. That it is true that the message of colonialism, the fact that we think that Queen Victoria could save us, and the people of St. Anne petitioned her in 1865, thinking that the Queen is on our side. And we were thinking that we are complaining about the planters, not remembering that it's her planters who she compensated. So what he says that the mental slavery that continues is directly, even in my profession, there are lawyers who have no problem and who smile and accept King's counsel without totally being ignorant of what it really means. So I agree with that observation.
And it goes on, with all what Bert mentioned, it begged me to ask, what am I voting for? I am on an island surrounded by the sea and cannot freely access it. And he talks about Christendom is a sole licensee and authorized distributor for God in Jamaica. Every other form of celebration of the Creator is irrelevant or demonized.
Yes, because, these licenses that are issued by the beach control, who sits on these boards? Who is giving these licenses for the use of our sea? The people are always, taken away from these decision processes. So people can apply for license to save the beach, and it is not something that the populace has a say in.
So many questions I'm trying to get through them, but I'll do that. I promise you I'll try and get through as many of them. Some are comments, some are questions. But Bert, let us go now to constitutional reform, because how might this address what we're talking about here?
Well, this albatross around our neck, the fact that the Constitution was written in Buckingham Palace, you have to know that is where it was written. So the constitutional reform that we're thinking about, it is almost, because it's so intertwined with the Queen and the King of England, it is not really a reform, it's revamping the Constitution, starting afresh. I mean, South Africa had a golden opportunity to start their Constitution from scratch because of the apartheid period. I think that the Constitution that now exists, its structure and all of that, needs total revamping. And therefore, when we remove the colonial messages from the Constitution, we have to empower the people. Are we brave enough to put a clause in the Constitution that says the Jamaican people are entitled to reparations? Are we prepared to do that? Or will we be looking over our shoulders if the British and the other colonial states are upset with the fact that we now seek a new beginning? Because I think that reparations should be part of the constitutional rights of the Jamaican people. What that will do, it will fly in the face of British rules about statute of limitations. Because what they did, they put a rule in place that you can't claim after 6 years. And that's what they put in front of us, that slavery is centuries old and we can make no claim because the statute of limitation is 6 years. That statute of limitation is a colonial law. The British didn't need to go back more than 6 years because they were never in capture. They were never in capture. No, we were captured and enslaved. Why are we putting this 6-year limit on the ability of the Jamaican people to make a claim? of Jamaica. But I know there's great mistrust in giving it to the politicians to distribute, but we must take those lands away from the crown and give it to the people who walked off the plantation with nothing. So, is it going to be a revolutionary constitution? If it is not, we're going to be coming back here in another program.
To what extent can it be a revolutionary constitution without the abolishing the monarchy as head of state? Not abolishing the monarchy, can afford a job that to abolish them, but as head of state of Jamaica.
Well, that must be non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. But I think that if you take the monarchy out of the constitution, we should immediately hold them liable to their enrichment. That is the monarchy itself. Because the predecessor, Charles's ancestors, created a company called the African Shipping Company. African Shipping Company, which had monopoly on the Atlantic Ocean and gained huge percentage of profit after the trading and the kidnapping and the human trade. And therefore, if we take the monarchy out of the Constitution, we must have a clause that says that you are now liable to the Jamaican people. Are we prepared to do that? You answer me.
That's a question where I know you're not here representing the National Council of Reparation, for which you're the vice chair, but I'm sure that question must have come up there. I hope so.
Yes, and liability is a huge question. Once you're walking away from a situation, one of the questions asked is, are you liable in any way? Are you liable? Because your ancestors, you made sure, the British monarchy made sure that the planters got the equivalent of £3 billion today. So why can you walk away from the Jamaican Constitution without saying we did wrong, and we think at least the starting point in the negotiation is that £3 billion. You match it, and then you move now to the human suffering. Because the loss of the planter was not the loss of their dignity, their name, or their, everything, and their language. They didn't suffer that loss, but they got £20 million. Now, the 20 billion, £3 billion today is the deposit. I see it as a deposit before we put on the past or suffering in which the crown and the monarchy was complicit in.
Donna Martin says Christianity must take full responsibility for this genocide. It was Christianity that started this whole vulgarity. Oh, Donna, you're talking about what's happening in Israel. Okay, Zionist Israel. Okay, so let me go on. Okay, so she asks, this is Donna, again, she says, what is this carrot the UK Privy Council is dangling? The proposal for Jamaican jurists to sit on the Privy Council to bridge cultural differences between the judges. Isn't that what the CCJ is about? A panel of jurists that are Caribbean and therefore knowledgeable in our cultural behavioral practices? Is it the enormous revenue that they gain from us remaining that has brought about this sudden enticement?
You hit one of my nerves now. Here's it that this so-called Lord Reed comes to Jamaica to tell us that the Privy Council should continue, we should put some black faces on it. That's what he's coming to say. So he's for the retention of a court that reports to King Charles. And he's trying to tell us that we can also, approach the court virtually. We don't have to travel to England. That is a bogus argument because you cannot file a matter unless you have what is called an agent in England, a solicitor called England, and you have to pay them handsomely. So when Reed comes out here to make us feel that we should just put a couple of black faces on that court so that, we can represent, but they would still be in charge of that court. He's insulting the intellect of the Jamaican, insulting the intellect of Caribbean lawyers. We can administer the final court of appeal through a Caribbean court. KABU, when the West Indies just started to play cricket, they used to beat us until they learned it and could whop them in that. They feel that, they are the author and finisher arbiter of all things to do with intellect. And that Privy Council position taken by this so-called Lord Reed is an insult to the Jamaican people.
But we saw the Prime Minister also begging the King of England to be part of his Privy Council, or did he do it under the Queen? But he did beg the monarchy to be a Privy Councillor.
Yes, and to join it, and it says it's an advisory body to the Queen. And it is just a sham, because you would never ask any person looking like our Prime Minister for any advice. But it is an entrenchment of colonialism for any Prime Minister of America to want to be part of that position.
But what does that say about what we're talking about, though? Because if the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister is in his right mind, and even if he's been advised to do this by the many around him, he's in his right mind, we assume. And what does it say about his thinking regarding everything that we're talking about here, constitutional reform, all these laws on the book, NEPA that is in his office, the beach management, beach control act that is that he's weaponizing against the people of Jamaica? What does it say about his thinking? If he's requesting of the King of England to be part of his Privy Council, if he has made, because you can't, this is a request that you make. If he's making that request, what does that say about all that we're talking about here, Mr. Bill Samuels?
KABU, I hate to get personal. I could have chosen to apply for King's Council, and maybe I'd have made more money, because King's Council had paid much more than other lawyers. But if you stand for the principle that this king and this monarch, and if you're educated, that this king and, they oversaw the enslavement of your people, why would you want to apply to be part of any of the structures of that monarchy? Why would you want to be? And you went to the University of the West Indies, and you were not taught enough to step aside from that monarchy?
But the University of the West Indies up to just recently had the visitor and the visitors lodge, and the visitor would have been the head of the monarchy, the king or the queen.
Yes. So I did a case about 15 years ago, and when I went to court for a doctor who was a student at the University of the West Indies, the judge told me he couldn't help me. I must go to the Queen of England to be helped. And I'm telling you, I was in the courtroom. The judge reprimanded me because all that was left for me to do is use excuses. I lost it in court. The judge had to tell me to behave myself. And I think after that I wrote an article about this insult in the seat of learning at UWI. And I think they have now decided, and they have created a local person as the visitor.
Let me take another break, Bert. We'll be right back. And let me just tell you what, because a listener, Kevin Nairiri, and also Sondri, so they're asking a similar question. So Kevin says, please ask Bert to talk about the Slavery Compensation Act. And I know that I saw from Sondri where she mentioned, asked if you could, you mentioned it, and if you could return to that conversation. So we'll be come back from the break. On the books here in Jamaica, looking at colonial practices that are entrenched and also the vestiges of colonialism. With us online, he's been with us since 7:30 this morning, is Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels, helping us to understand what it is that we're facing. It is what it is, and we deal with the isness of things. It doesn't make any sense that we go outside of what is to understand where we are. But don't we have to diagnose it before we can treat it? Because if a cancer, why are we treating diabetes? And this is, I think, is our problem, that we're not looking at the reality of what we're faced with when it comes to the laws, the colonial practices, the vestiges of colonialism, and how those are impacting on our very survival on this island.
Yes, because post-slavery traumatic syndrome puts us in denial. So when we hear God save the Queen in the courts, we get so used to it that we accept it. And therefore, it is what it is, as you said, man. We must take on these issues because history is going to judge us harshly. And our children are going to say, how did we live with it? Why didn't we do anything about it? So that's why we have to examine it, exhume it, and examine it.
And K-Dot is asking, our children taught these things, even to the point you raised about cricket, and he's saying why cricket is so important to us, because it was our weapon against the down pressers, and if our children are taught these things, and no, not really. This is not a teaching that we have, I think. I'm asking and answering at the same time.
Yes.
All right.
The Slave Compensation Act.
Yes, let's go to the Slave Compensation Act.
All right. So the Slave Compensation Act of 1837 and the Abolition Act of 1832. Those acts are the laws passed by the British Parliament to compensate the slave owners. And I'll tell you this. Although it's called the Abolition Act, do you know that in the same sentence where it says that slavery is abolished, it says there shall be compensation for the planters? So the Abolition Act is a reparation act for the enslaved. You believe that?
Yes.
It is. So at the same time, the law that abolished slavery, in the same law, it gave the right to compensation to the slave owners. That's one of the things we have to learn. And do you believe that in 2009, the British went back into the Abolition Act and repealed it? I'm talking about 15 years ago. Do you know that they did that? They repealed
What does that mean?
Abolition Act.
What does that mean?
It means that the Abolition Act, it means that slavery on the books could continue. They say they were overhauling the laws of England, they were updating them and doing all kinds of things. Now listen to this, KABU. If you're going to touch something called the Abolition Act, that is so much part of us, you're going to repeal it. Did the British High Commission in Jamaica keep a meeting with us down here to tell us why they were going to repeal the 1833 Abolition Act in 2009? They didn't do that. They have no respect for us.
How did we find out?
In 2009.
How did we find out, Bert, that they...
I am going to Google and look upon it 5 years ago.
I know, I'm laughing, but I Miss Lou laugh again.
Yes.
So here's the thing, and this is why I know you mentioned it in the space before, but I have many new listeners here, and I want to underscore it properly.
The Abolition Act has been repealed by England. So by that means we were re-enslaved in 2009. Slavery was now legal.
Legally, that's what it means, Bert?
That's exactly. Well, if you repeal a law, it means that you're going back to before the law was repealed. They have an excuse that they were upgrading the laws and taking the old laws out and all that. But you don't do that to my Holocaust, and then I find out, by the way.
So how do you clean out a law? You can upgrade the law or change it, but how you clean out a law? It's like you go in a room and you do spring cleaning and you do so, don't you? So take out the abolition. Throw the abolition act, we don't need that.
How could IRFM be doing something that affects the workers and don't tell them? They just arrive one morning and hear that the rules have changed. Right? And you do it clandestinely. I am saying that the High Commission in Jamaica, the High Commission in Jamaica, has an apology to issue to the people of Jamaica that they went and abolished the abolition law in 2009 without telling us why they were doing it and to seek our permission if they could touch that law.
So they have repealed the Abolition Act. Britain, let me just underscore this to people. Britain has repealed the Abolition Act. Bert Samuel's Pan-African Attorney Law is saying that what this means from a legal perspective, using his legal mind, his legal lenses, is that it leaves it open now for the interpretation that slavery is still legal, still on the book, wasn't a crime against humanity, and we can be enslaved again.
Yes. Let them come and tell us more. We put that to them. Let them come and explain it to the Jamaican people. The explanation was that they're upgrading their laws, etc. They have no decency to put this, the recollection of this trauma on the Jamaican and the Caribbean people when you repeal the Abolition Act with no consultation with the government of the Caribbean. Caribbean.
And obviously, to understand it a bit better, parts of the Abolition Act and what it says obviously would have spoken directly to slavery.
Yeah, and it also created emancipation, that it was a gradual process, and it also gave the right to the planters to pay reparation, that is the £20 million.
And so that, what does it mean to repeal? What does the word mean?
In a word, when an act is repealed, it means it has no more force. So the abolition had no more force when you repeal a law. And I will tell you, they're going to tell you some fancy legal things, why they did it. My first position is, how could you touch it without consulting with us?
Journalism has failed in this regard, I think, because I've not seen it reported anywhere. You have said it more than once in this program, on this space. We have talked about it, but we have not seen it reported anywhere. It means that even within journalism and academia, I think,
and or lawyers,
and so why is it being treated in this way? Why is it that we don't have, do you think it's that we do not understand that whether it's journalism or law or academia, that it's not understood what has happened here and what it means, the consequences of this?
I mean, I don't want to hear any explanation from them. Once they repeat the Abolition Act, I go crazy. I don't want to hear an excuse.
Yeah, you understood it immediately, and I'm just talking about our people in the different spaces. You think that academia would understand that, and law, of course. And I see where journalism is failing on it, and I can understand because I work in the industry. People talk to you every day, but they'd rather hear about that case out of England, than this other thing that you have been saying, which is they have gone and repealed the Abolition Act. Britain has done that. What does it mean? And the conversation that we need to have around that. I hope that tomorrow morning that we'll hear some more reporting on this, that people will call you, ask you what it means exactly, and that also to say that you have called on the British High Commission here in Jamaica to apologize. Give us a voice clip on that, Bert, right away. What exactly are you calling for?
I'm calling, firstly, for an apology by the British government to the British High Commission here for repealing the Abolition Act of 1833, 15 years ago, 2009, without consulting with us and explaining why they are going to tinker with it before we would stand ground and say, do not touch it. I'm calling for an apology from the British government.
And once again, we're repeating ourselves. From your perspective as an attorney, a Pan-African attorney at law who's been looking at the Abolition Act, who's been talking about emancipation, who's a member of the National Council on Reparations, a vice chair to boot, that this has meaning and consequences. What are the meanings that you're seeing coming out of this, and what are the consequences?
Right. The meaning coming out of this, when you repeal a law, it means, in effect, as a lawyer, it means that slavery continues. And secondly, it means that you should put in place a law which definitively comes into force the same day, putting back the abolition of slavery on the books.
Very clearly said. Bert, I'm going to give you the final word because we're totally out of time, but just to say thank you so much. And the final word.
KABU, we thought we would have been able to discuss 21 areas. We did about half. Thanks for the opportunity from IRFN. When I go to the market, which I go, Coronation Market on a Thursday, or when I go to my garage and all that, the ordinary, what we call the ordinary folk are so much into IRFN as the vanguard of the Pan-African education. And I salute IRFN. I see it as my duty to come here and to participate in the Running African.
Thank you so much, Bert.
At home and abroad.
Thank you so much, my brother. And what we'll do, thank you for the work you have been doing for all these years. Thank you so much. I remember remember when we met up, we buck up at the waterfront when we were paying tribute to our ancestors and talking about the Zong and so on, and people were crying like crazy that you were one of those many years ago yourself, Professor Very Shepherd, me, and so many others who were just weeping at the waterfront, remembering so many of our ancestors who were...
What about Stony Gut? Remember we met up in Stony Gut?
Stony Gut was long after.
Then Trial of Governor here.
Trial of Governor here, yes.
IRFM link that has the Trial of Governor here that has sent so many people to... Many persons have done their PhD assisted by that work. Thank you, IRFM, for being the link on which you can still find the Trial of Governor here.
It is. Thank you so much once again, my brother Bert Samuels, and I hope that we get another chance to do the other 15 that we didn't do, and to continue. Because we have to talk about constitutional reform, so we'll come forward. Thank you, Bert.
Take care.
Bert Samuels, Pan-African attorney at law. What a work.